Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back here at the industry stage on the Formnext in 2024. I'm totally confused today. So we want to make a wrap up of day 2, or pretty much of the first 2 days in our after work talk. And in order to do so, because Frank, greet Frank. Frank, good to have you back here on stage.
Yeah.
And I tell you what,
it's always a pleasure to be with you.
I tell the three of you why it's so important that you're here, because Frank, the two of us never get on the fair, right?
Yeah.
We can't experience anything. This is why we invited you. So let's start here. I don't need to introduce you, but it's Tuan TranPham. You are president for the regions America and Asia Pacific at Anisoprint. Is that correct?
Anisoprint.
Yeah, but honestly, as you are so active on social media, nobody needs to introduce you. A pleasure to have you here. So we have Joris or Joris. Yeah, what do you
Whatever,
like?
it's okay.
Yeah, Joris, Piers. You are Vice President of Consulting at Additive Manufacturing Research and Executive Editor at 3dprint.com, so you can tell us a lot. And last but not least, and we know already each other, it's Matthias Schmidt-Lehr. You are Managing Partner at AM Power, and you're delivering some very insightful information. Matthias, I think you made it on time, but I think you're really busy at Formnext, right?
I think we all are, but yeah. Formnext is busy, great, and also stressful, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the kind of stress you have?
Oh,
Just let us know.
I mean, I think the stress comes from not being used to talk the whole day.
What?
Starting from the morning through the whole day.
So look at us
usually
We have the same problem.
I mean, usually with work, right? I mean, usually I'm sitting on my desk and I'm working, or I'm talking on the phone and something. It's different if you in a hall with dry air and everything. So it is exhausting.
But tell us about your projects. What are the content of the many talks here?
I mean, we all know that this industry going through change right now.
Yeah.
I think hockey sticks are over, and we are all looking into how to become profitable, right? How to make money with 3D printing. I think there's a podcast somewhere, making money or printing money, right?
Yeah.
That's
I don't know.
hitting it pretty good. Making money with 3D printing is the big question, and that's what everyone is wondering. I mean, first of all, the customers, the users have to make money with printing. They don't do that for fun. Most of them actually try to create great products, and that generate revenues, that generate income, etc., etc. And secondly, all the companies who supply into this industry who now lack the investments because it's much more difficult to get any funding in this market right now. They need to become profitable, or they will vanish from this market.
Yeah.
And that's the situation we are also in right now, also ourselves, by being approached by companies who are looking for funding, being approached by companies who want to merge or want to explore opportunities on the market.
You have an own booth here?
We have our booth, yeah. We have our booth in 12O. Don't ask me for the number, B something, I don't know. But it's green and blue, so you'll find it.
That's a good idea. Joris, one question to you. I mean, let's say on Saturday morning, when I getting relaxed after the 4 days of Formnext, I will visit your website and try to summarize what I missed, basically.
Yeah.
So give us a summary of the first 2 days. What will be the headlines on 3dprint.com for the first 2 days?
Yeah, I think, more realism and more application focus.
Yeah.
So we're seeing this before. Like before, it was the box people, the really were doing things. Here's our box. Give it €1 million. Take 3 years, spend 2 million more, and then you can have this amazing technology for aerospace. And now it's much more people are doing an application focus because they want to make it easier to sell things, or they're doing services to make it easier to sell things, or they're just getting everything together and saying, okay, you come to us and we give you a part. And so the value is really in being able to very, very quickly get a customer at very little risk to them. You're not going to risk your career anymore. You're not going to risk a lot of money. You're just going to buy a filter.
Yeah.
For a filter light, you're going to buy one bike seat kind of proof of concept, right? So it's much faster. So there's much more realism. Totally agree. There's less money. We can't be frivolous anymore, and we have to actually get to the applications that make sense, that aren't cool anymore. One of the great examples is I've seen a lot of parts that look really boring. Like before, it was all these aero spike engines and everything looked like Geiger made it and it was all sci-fi and stuff. Now it's like, this is a pipe fit drifting, and it's like boring as hell, dude. But it's like, okay, that excites me now.
Matthias, I don't know whether you remember at AM Forum, that was one of the best quotes from the whole forum, that somebody said, we need to get boring again. I love that so much.
Manufacturing is boring.
I mean, it is boring, and it should end up in a rut. What were your highlights over the last 2 days? And do you agree with the two guys? If not, please be open.
I do agree that there's much more application focus. It's just good to be back. I think it's like the annual pilgrimage reunion, meeting the right people, making new friends. I think this is a great format and see newer technology, but there's a lot of the same stuff. And what I worry about, to be honest, when I look around, this is bigger than last year, 860 exhibitors, but I'm like, is the market big enough to feed all these exhibitors? And I'm getting worried. Because if you're not different and unique and you identify a few killer applications, you're not going to get money. You're not going to survive. You don't deserve to live. So all the free money we saw, $2 billion a few years ago, money is dried up. So the few companies that actually are able to get money, those are real companies.
And also, I think what's interesting, I think we did some research, like one of the funniest things ever is like the biggest funding body in 3D printing right now. The biggest thing in the entire industry is the Air Force Research Lab. Right? In the US, Air Force Research Lab is putting in more money than any other organization. And the US military and defense establishment is by far the biggest funding, above private equity, VC funding, everything. And the fastest growing application in 3D printing at the moment is suppressors for weapons. So we're talking about a metal 3D printed suppressor that is meant to reduce the signature, the heat signature, and the sound of a gun. Right? And this is something we did a report on this in 2017. We do another one this year, and it's exploding. And like literally, the service bureaus are full of suppressors. So all of a sudden, we started a couple of years ago. When we started, it was all like, heal the world,
and when you
make life a better place. And now it's like, wait, we're making suppressors for guns.
Joris, when you compare the revenue in total with different industry sectors like medicine, automotive, and so, how is it compared to them? You mentioned it is fast growing, but how is the actual
It depends
size?
where you. I wouldn't be able to say that right now because it's very difficult.
Because we had a discussion this morning, and I quoted something similar to what you said without that example, and I was folded behind, by some guys here on stage. They said, okay, defense is important, but nothing compared to medicine, for example.
It depends what you conquer. The money flowing in is much more from defense than for other things. But the applications like Invisalign plus all this other stuff is, of course, in total more than everything that's happened. We would expect to, if we fast forward a couple of years, this picture to be remarkably different. But at the moment, I can't say the revenue-wise, it is indeed. I agree with. It is smaller than other more established segments, but the cash coming in and the number of service bureaus and the number of machines going to that business, as compared to a couple of years ago, is a staggering difference.
I think in some way it's follow the money, right? In some way you can say that 3D printing industry, the honeymoon is over, the party is over, the money has been depleted. So now wherever the money is coming from, it's going to dictate the new direction of the industry. So to honestly, in my opinion, the industry is like, what got you here won't get you there. And if you don't adapt and solve real problem, you're not gonna be surviving in the coming years. So this is a wake-up call.
But honestly, in my opinion, that's what I mentioned this morning, right? I mean, and I'm fully behind this opinion. I think this is a good moment, to be honest, because as you said, if you don't get a solution that makes money, you don't deserve surviving. And like we discussed it yesterday with Arno as well, so water in the river is running low. My wife is always laughing about this quote. But what is meant is that you can see the opticals, you need to get better in navigating, and you need to get through the river with lower resources. That's basically it. And this will differ the real success stories from the ones that had been holding up by money the last few years. So, Matthias, one question to you, because, I mean, you are supplying us the AM Power report, which I'm really looking forward next year. So, what are you thinking about next year? Is it getting more difficult to create the report? Because, I mean, there was so much changes in 24, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of changes. And actually, the difficult part is to identify the companies that are not on the market anymore, because that's not being published anywhere, right? So they're just secretly vanishing from the landscape. So it's kind of difficult to track that from time to time. On the other hand, we see also that the companies who are actually growing and who mean additive series and who are profitable, they have a big interest in numbers. And so they are also open to provide the numbers because they see the need for market intelligence. Mainly because it's not so much about growth rates anymore, but it's getting more and more about the cake and how the cake is distributed among the leading players. So usually at a consolidated industry after such a phase looks like in a way where you have 5, 6 players who dominate maybe 70, 80% of the market, and then you have a bunch of players who look at certain niche markets and serve those niche markets, and that's where we're going to be in I don't know, 1 year, 2 years time. And the large players are the ones who are interested in those market numbers, and so I don't see more difficulties. Where I do see difficulties is the whole political situation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think between Europe and the US, I still see no problem, but there's so much happening in Asia that we don't see and we don't necessarily see all the time. And you talked about the biggest funding being from the defense segment. I'm pretty confident that the same is happening in China. And sure, yeah. I mean, obviously, what is financing those companies there is also predominantly aerospace and defense. But it's much more difficult to get actually substantial data on those programs because obviously they don't like to share much about that. So I think that's a blind spot that everyone is working with in the Western Hemisphere. And we're trying to dig into that. We're trying to bring light to it for market intelligence side. At the same time, trying to maintain a confidential relationship with all those players because it's a lot about confidence and confidentiality, and at the same time publishing numbers. It's a difficult task to
I believe
that's the difficult part of actually doing a report in that times. Yeah.
Just one question, then I hand over to Frank again, Tuan. I mean, let me tell it from my perspective. So you sit here and you talk to the people all over the day and you get different impressions. And for example, I've seen yesterday the startups. So Matthias mentioned, and I totally believe that, you see a consolidation right now. So there will be dominant players surviving and you have these niche players.
Yep.
That would lead, in my opinion, to some certain orientation or focus in the companies presenting to you. But I don't see that. You know what I mean? So I see still the same amount of fancy ideas and directions the people are running. And usually, from my perspective of a consolidation, there should be like, I'm focusing only on these 3 markets right now, because, and I don't see that. Why is that? Or how do you see that?
Well, the key word is there's a huge regrouping right now. While the consolidation attempts last year failed, it's happening now, but it hasn't commenced yet. So for instance, Leonardo Dimension wants to buy Desktop Metal and Markforged. God knows how they're going to integrate these 2 companies, the people, the talent, the R&D, let alone the resellers, and how that will impact the rest of the industry. So I think it's yet to see, but definitely this regrouping, everybody needs to see that there will be fewer gorillas. And if you're chimpanzee and you're not focused and you're unique, you're going to be eaten alive, but you need to go to a different island. Did that kind of answer your question?
I love that. I love that explanation. Thanks so much.
Can I add something to that? I mean, to your question, why don't you see them? Honestly, because I think they're not at Formnext.
Yeah.
The companies who are actually focusing on a specific segment, they don't see their customers here. So the ones who are really looking into, let's say, dental, let's say orthopedics, or let's say defense, space, whatever. The company who's really focusing on a specific solution for a specific problem doesn't find its customers at Formnext. So I think what we still see here are all the players who play in several industry segments and who still are open to many segments, many applications. Right.
Okay,
so and there's a talk a lot already around the whole industry about where do we exhibit, where do we find our customers. And I think the ones who actually try to focus on specific segments are probably better off actually meeting their customers at where they are, right, and where they're going.
For example. Yeah, very good answer.
I wanted to hook on the aspect of funding. Matthias just gave the impression that there is happening a lot. You saw it from the perspective that you miss a data, that you do not see what's happening, but that what you meant, or what I heard, is there is happening a lot. And my question is, do we have a message here for our government that should happen here more. Can you make a vote for our government in Germany or in Europe that there should be funding programs or more support, something like that?
Definitely. I mean, exactly the way you see it. I mean, the US is pushing with applications. China is pushing with application. Every smaller country is having similar, more focused maybe programs. And to be honest, in Europe, we are missing the support to actually invest, supporting companies by investing into new applications that are better made with additive, right? Maybe not even necessary additive, but rethinking applications and rethinking manufacturing for certain applications. And we know the obvious industries where this makes sense. It's medical, it's energy, it's defense. And there are so many benefits that you can draw from it. From the one side, you can increase performance, you can reduce CO2 footprint, all the things that you're actually aiming at as a European governmental organization. All those things can be supported by additive manufacturing. And I'm not a fan of directly supporting additive manufacturing companies.
I think we cannot do that in Europe, like in China. You can give 1 billion of
you might find
company,
ways. You might find any ways to do that if you agree on the European basis, probably. But in the end, I think there's much more value in supporting companies adopting that technology, and there are possibilities to fund that. It just needs to be done. And we know in Germany we have this painful instrument of blocking any credit that you can take as a whole country, which is basically stopping any innovation to happen in that segment and stopping the government to actually fund investing into manufacturing technologies.
I don't think it would be very useful. We just need to make better printers. We need to make better products. We need to be better engineers and better inventors.
Oh, and how to get them?
No, but see, the thing is, the biggest company in additive manufacturing in terms of revenue, do you know what it is? Anybody want to guess? It's Bamboo Lab. Bamboo Lab is the biggest company in additive manufacturing in terms of revenue, and it may have $1 billion in revenue. We don't know yet for sure, but I think it's approaching $1 billion. So it's much larger than 3D Systems and Stratasys. And it's, what is it, 3 years old, 4 years old?
And they started with Kickstarter, wasn't it?
Yeah, they started with Kickstarter and VC funding, right? A lot of VC funding, but they made a better printer. They made a better printer than all these other guys who have been making printers for 20, 30 years. So it's like, it's not about that. It's about like having the skills to make a much better device that changes the market. Yeah. And this changes the market, right? Yeah. I mean, I know people that are making 800,000 parts on Bamboo Lab printers, and it yields above 90% on a $1,000 consumer device. Right? That changes the market. And I think the problem with this like subsidy stuff is it always goes to, in Europe, it'll go to like, oh yeah, we're gonna recycle something or something. It's always useless, right? And the problem is it's great. I know people live off of this stuff, but it's not gonna get us something that will rival the Bamboo Lab. You have to be more ambitious than these guys, and you have to make a better device. And I think that's the thing is like we're used to being the technology leader, because historically that's what Europe has been, a pace of technology leader. We have to accept we are not. And we have to figure out how to make ourselves the technology leader again. And that is, I think, a much more different approach. We have to dream bigger, and we have to actually make that work.
But the problem is we are in a situation where money is not available anymore.
Yeah.
Or much more difficult to get. So you can only become technology leader if you have the customers who push you, if the customers who have the money to actually invest into you, and if you have profitability in eyesight somewhere, and that's where we are right now, I think. So
I actually have a different take on that. Even with the government support, even there's a renewed influx of money. If you go back to the Bamboo Lab example, it is, I will redirect the focus to talent. We are very much the very same people, but we're not reinventing ourselves or thinking differently. My interpretation of decoding Bamboo Lab is the talent. They came from outside this industry. They took software, machine learning, user experience. They took a fresh take. You know, I've been in 3D printing for 21 years. When I hear other Americans on the Zoom call say they love their bamboo, it's like, shit, you love a product? This sounds a little bit like Apple, right? Then you deserve to make money. Yeah. And so that's like a wake-up call for the industry. It's like, you forget making a printer. Making a printer that people actually want to use.
Yes.
Yeah, or I mean, and probably understood Matthias correctly. If you look in the US market, what I often see with startups especially, they get really quickly orders by NASA or by the Air Force. They integrate them, and that would be a healthy investment. You know, it's not like getting money for nothing. They're getting money for a solution, and that would push two things. First, you get technologically more developed again because you have to think of how to provide a solution. And you get money without getting investments. This should be, because you are financing yourself in an organic growth by delivering solution.
Yeah.
That would be, in my opinion, the way.
But coming back to my initial question, what can our message be to the government? Okay, we have the one aspect of money or of funding in certain ways, and now we have talent. Could it be to strengthen the community by bringing the knowledge into the young people, into the schools, into the universities? Is funding new institutes for building up a knowledge community? Would that be a message from us here to the deciders outside?
I personally don't. Well, you want to?
I think money will come if you have the right vision. I think the biggest problem is several governments do not have the right vision. If the future, where we're going, is the fourth industrial revolution, if the future is factory of the future, automation, if the future is in integration beyond 3D printing or IoT, machine learning, sensors, if all that is the future, like NVIDIA CEO went to Denmark to initiate the new supercomputer print farm in Denmark. It's like, that's an example of a Danish government pushing for the future. If you don't invest in the future, you're not going to help manufacturing, reshoring, or anything. So I think it's a leadership problem, to answer your question with the German government. You need the vision, and then you get the support and the funding to follow through. If you don't have the right idea, you shouldn't get funding.
Yeah. No, I think so too. But there's also a trap in this. I like the Air Force example, because in the US now they're doing attritable drones, which is a word I still don't know how to pronounce, but it really means it's a drone that's disposable but also costs $100,000, right? In Ukraine, their drones are costing $180, the FPV drones, right? And there's thousands of Creality printers and Bamboo Lab printers making them. There's also some MGF. There's EOS as well, which they probably won't happy with, but whatever. This is determining the future of this warfare thing. The future of the warfare is not to make the drone the Air Force wants, it's to make the drone that makes the drone the Air Force wants obsolete.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at that, how fast this is changing, we're talking about an application that is like something that is overtaking. They're making maybe over 3 million 3D printed drones this year, and 10 million next year. It's one of the most 3D printed parts in the world is a drone body, right? But they're only doing this because they're faster. And they used to print the whole body, and now they're doing laser cutting it because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like we're a useful technology, but we're a useful technology to usher in technological change. But that only works with this vision idea, and if ultimately the device is much better to replace everything else. So we're technologically being disrupted in a certain sense, and that to me is really exciting, that we're able to now have the machine and the part cost down to a level where we can actually disrupt things. We've always had the problem that cars don't work, right? Because a car, it costs about 20 euros per kilo, right? If you look at like a Toyota Corolla Golf, you know? And then we're talking to these guys, and it's always like, it's too expensive. Of course it's too expensive. And then bicycles work, because a racing bicycle it's like 1,000 euros per kilo. So we only got the really expensive stuff. And now I think really what's interesting is now we're getting cheaper, DED, you know, it's cheaper machines, things like Meltio, stuff like this. And we're talking about much cheaper per kilo, and then we can disrupt more things. So then I think we're actually going to be in a position to, if you do want to talk to the government, say, okay, we can really change how we make a chassis, or we can change how we make a thing, rather than doing only the fancy satellites, right? Or you know, rocket engines, stuff like this.
So now time is running out, or was running out already. But still, let us take 1 minute for the audience to hear from each and every one of you, and take 10 seconds to think about it. What was the most amazing thing you have seen here at Formnext? Because honestly, the three of you are so well connected. We want to hear that for sure. Tuan.
Ooh, okay.
You go first.
Okay,
Yeah.
Scheffler, the Scheffler machine. I love it very much. Multi-material, 3 different materials on the machine at the same time. Better heat sinks, better mold release. I love it to death. We know already the technology's been around, but this is actually there. You can buy it, and I think it's going to change a lot of stuff in electronics and stuff. I love it. Love it.
Cool. Matthias, already something beside the many conversations you had?
There's something coming to my mind. I'm certain I'm going to see more for the next days. But what I thought was a really great thing was AIM3D. I don't know if you know the company. It's a small FDM, padded FDM company. They've developed a slicing tool that allows, they call it voxel fill, that allows them to solve the problem with the Z strength in FDM.
Yeah.
It's a major problem that's hindering a bunch of applications to become real, because you can always break the part in one direction. It's not isotropic strength in those parts. And with their software, they can actually transform every 3D printer by just changing the slicer software into actually having isotropic properties, nearly isotropic properties in Z strength in all three dimensions. And I think this is a very small thing. It's a very small key thing, but it's going to change. It's probably going to change a lot of use cases in FDM that we don't even know yet.
Great.
I think to my point is, to Joris' point, a lot of technology become more affordable, more simplified, but I think what I still enjoy the most here at Formnext is the conversation that happened randomly. It's like I was in the Anisoprint booth with just talking to a prospect, and Scott Crump, the grandfather, the founder of FDM, of 3D printing, stopped by and he wanted to chat with us. So I think the conversation that we hear, we learn from having conversation around on randomly, that makes us think more differently. I think those are most valuable to me, is the conversation through the networking.
That's the best closing word we could have, Tuan. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for being our guest in our panel. Thank you, fantastic. Dear audience, thank you so much for joining us on day 2 at Formnext 2024. And as you can be assured, we will be here tomorrow again. So please check on LinkedIn in order to be on time for our live stream. We will start tomorrow with our morning talk and introduce you into the day. It was a fantastic second day, and I'm really glad to see you tomorrow again. Bye-bye. Have a great evening.